me start the recording. Excellent. Okay, so let's start this again. Hello, I'm Dr. Samantha Ramanan. We're going to be talking about the health benefits of hemp today. So I know there's a lot of confusion when we're talking about the nomenclature of cannabis. So hemp, CBD, THC, marijuana. How are all of these things related, and how can we kind of distinguish what is what and what can be best utilized for you and maybe your health care condition? So that's the point of this webinar. We're going to get down to a little bit of the biochemical processes of hemp and marijuana, so that you just can kind of understand a little bit better, get a good understanding of what it is and how it can benefit you. So let's go ahead and get into it. So hemp is really marijuana's non-psychoactive cousin. So it's officially named cannabis sativa L. So hemp and marijuana, they definitely come from the same plant, cannabis sativa. Hemp can be split up into a male and a female parts. And these plants, hemp plants specifically, they've really been used for thousands of years, 10,000 years really, for anywhere from fiber from the plant stem, protein from the seeds, and then the oils and the smokable portions are really from the leaves and flowers. So where you might hear marijuana, you're thinking of the female flower of cannabis. When we're talking about hemp, we're really talking about all the other parts that doesn't have much of that psychoactive THC component. And I'm going to break that down for you, but that's just kind of an overview. Hemp has really been used for many years from making things like paper, fuel, fabric, rope, building materials. It's very, very versatile, and it's very, very cheap, which is also where its other counterpart, weed, comes from, is because it grows quickly and it grows abundantly. Okay, so the history of hemp. I had a lot of fun researching this because it is really quite fascinating. Hemp originally was grown in China, and it was introduced into the United States in the 17th century and the 18th century. It was completely legal to grow. And in fact, if you refuse to grow hemp, you actually could get in trouble. You could actually go to jail, because back then hemp was very, very essential. This was before cotton. So it was essential for fabric, for sails, ropes. It was the main ingredient in textiles, in curtains, bed sheets, all sorts of things. It wasn't until about the 1820s that cotton came to the United States, and that kind of reduced the requirement for hemp. And then hemp's long history now subsequently was banned from the United States in the 1930s, about the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act. That came into effect and made it almost impossible to buy or sell in the United States. So prior to the 20th century, it was all across the country, and there really weren't any illegal drugs in the United States. So things like cocaine, heroin, it was freely available in the United States. Prior to this law that was passed in the 1970 called Controlled Substance Act, which classified cannabis, including hemp, including the non-psychoactive components of it, as a Schedule I drug. So that's where it kind of started, that the whole plant was illegal. And then we have started on this very long process of clearing the nomenclature and then really, really understanding the effects of this plant and how it can best serve us. Okay, so a little bit more clarity on hemp versus marijuana. So simply put, hemp and marijuana, they come from the same plant, cannabis sativa. Hemp, however, is defined in the 2018 Farm Bill as the cannabis plant that contains less than 0.3% or less of THC by weight, while marijuana is the term used for plants containing greater than 0.3% of THC. One second. Yeah. Okay. Nope. Coming back. Go back. There you go. All right. So THC, what is that? So the long nomenclature of it is tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. That's the compound that is has the psychotropic effect. So that effect of getting high comes from the THC effect. CBD is the main non-psychoactive ingredients in cannabis. So when you think of hemp, think of the hemp being very high in CBD, so the non-psychoactive ingredients, CBDN, CBD, CBG, terpenes, but very, very, very low in THC. Okay. All right, so a little bit more information about what cannabis is used for today. So in 2014, the Farm Bill allowed programs such as hemp, or we call it industrial hemp at that time. They were approved by the US Department of Agriculture to grow and for some small scale cultivation, mostly for research. So it wasn't until 2014 it was actually legal to start to do some more research on this plant. So this is why it's very, very poorly understood in terms of its mechanism of action right now. In 2018, that Farm Bill allowed hemp cultivation a little bit more broadly. So we could transfer and grow hemp. It didn't put any restrictions on the sale and hemp derived products as long as it was consistent with the law. So it wasn't until the last 3-4 years that you're seeing a lot more of these hemp derived products, and you're going to be seeing a lot more of them in the coming years. So we need to understand them. Okay. All right, so cannabinoids. So cannabinoids, now you can think of cannabinoids as the molecule that makes up cannabis. They're chemical substances, and they bind to what we call the cannabinoid receptor in the central nervous system. And it's been used extensively throughout the world for their medicinal and also recreational effects. Hold on, I'm meeting one more person. So the cannabis plant actually contains 480 different chemicals, but it's about 80 to 100 of these chemicals really are classified as cannabinoids. And then of those 100 cannabinoids, there are really 12 classes, including the most popular CBD and THC. So there are a ton of cannabinoids that make up cannabis, and we still are just scratching the surface of understanding all of them and the different effects on the body. Right. Okay. So how does it work? You can really think of cannabinoids as the lock, as a lock and key mechanism. The keyhole is the receptor. The cannabinoid is the key that unlocks all of these reactions. So when cannabis is ingested, the cannabinoids, they will interact, the key will go into the keyhole, the receptor, and they're most commonly found in the brain, the central nervous system, so our nerve endings, and the immune system. So these are big systems with a lot of effects. So this is why one person can utilize CBD or THC for one thing, and a different person can use it for completely different. So it interacts on multiple different aspects of the brain and the immune system. and you get a bunch of very different results. So what are some of these results? So the specific effect will really be determined by which cannabinoids are involved. So overall, what the cannabinoid receptor will do in your body, it will affect sleep. It will affect your mood, appetite, memory. So all of these things are aspects of your central nervous system. They're aspects of something that the brain is interacting on more directly. So, and we have, by the limited research that we have done, your brain is jam-packed full of these receptors. It also can affect inflammation. It can affect certain things like fertility, reproduction. But again, we don't fully understand why. We don't understand what exactly, when the receptor and the cannabinoid comes together, what is it actually doing? Is it upregulating your hormones, or is it interacting on something else like reducing your stress load? So these are still areas that we need to understand. So ready to blow your mind. They're actually, cannabinoids are a little bit more common than you think. They can be found in a lot of other plants, not just cannabis, not just marijuana. Things like black pepper, cinnamon, echinacea, black truffles, raw cacao. We can find cannabinoids or cannabinoid-like compounds in other areas, in other plants. And then ready for your mind to be blown. Our body has a system for cannabinoids. We call it the endocannabinoid system, or ECS. And we create, without taking any of these fancy products, without taking cannabis, without ingesting CBD, our body creates endocannabinoids on its own. Molecules that you just make. They're very, very similar to cannabinoids in cannabis. And then the two key endocannabinoids that the body produces are these two really long-winded words, anandamide, or AEA, and this really, really long word called 2-arachidonyl glycol, or 2-AG. Very fancy words, but they're endocannabinoids. Endo meaning within your body, so your body makes it. You might hear of phytocannabinoids, which that means the plant-based. It comes from the plants. So endocannabinoids, you make phytocannabinoids, it comes from a plant. So while research has linked the endocannabinoid system to numerous processes, we still have yet to determine what are all these potential effects and functions. There's actually a really interesting theory called clinical endocannabinoid deficiency. So this is a theory, so it hasn't been proven, but the theory suggests that we have very low endocannabinoid levels in our bodies, and because of this, and because of the disruption to the endocannabinoid system, that has led to the development of all of these conditions that we're seeing kind of come out in our lives today, like cardiovascular conditions, neurological conditions like chronic anxiety and depression, some reproduction issues. So these things that are kind of increasing in our population today. The theory goes that it's because of a low amount of these endocannabinoids. Now, it's still a theory, but interesting to think about. There's still lots of research to be done. So the endocannabinoid system, think about it as we think about the receptors that can be found throughout the body. Let's now talk a little bit more about the system, what makes it up. So it's a very complex cell signaling system that functions a lot, that interacts on a lot of things on your central nervous system and your immune system. It has effects on other systems, but those are the most concentrated areas that we can find this endocannabinoid system. So there's three components. We got the receptor on the cell, the receptor meaning that keyhole. And then we have the actual endocannabinoid itself, which is the key that unlocks the system. And then we have the metabolic breakdown. So once the key, the keyhole come together, unlock a system, that has a cellular reaction in the body. And now what that cellular system interacts on, all we can see right now is the clinical effect. So the effects on sleep, on mood, on inflammation. That part still needs to be developed and more researched more. So now to understand, to just kind of get an idea of the endocannabinoid system, sometimes it's useful to think about homeostasis, this word that you might have heard about, but you're not quite sure what it is. Homeostasis is a concept in biology that our bodies have to stay within a range. So now that range will vary throughout the day, but you have to stay in a certain range for your body to fully function throughout the day. So things like body temperature. You have to stay within a range of body temperature for all of these chemical processes to move forward. You can't be too hot, you can't be too cold. That's why when you get a really high fever, that's dangerous. We're worried, we want to bring that down. Or if your body temperature gets too low, that's not good either. Same thing with things like blood pressure. Not too high, not too low. Things with electrolyte balance in your blood. That needs to stay within a certain range. Now, the endocannabinoid system helps your body keep you in range. It's very crucial in this concept of homeostasis. So because the endocannabinoid interacts on keeping your body within range, really all mammals have an endocannabinoid system. So it's shocking to think about that we have an actual natural biological system to process cannabinoids, whether they come from plants or you make them yourself. We have that system within us. All right, the bliss molecule. So remember I said that we make our own cannabinoids, the endocannabinoids. So remember one of them was called anandamide. Now, andina, it's a Sanskrit word. And what it comes from is this Sanskrit word for pleasure, joy, and happiness. So when this molecule, this endocannabinoid, was discovered, they named it as such because its receptor was found in the brain and it has those effects of happiness, joy, changing your mood. Prior to the discovery of this endocannabinoid, researchers didn't really understand why there were these cannabinoid receptors in our brain. We didn't know why they were there until we discovered that, oh wait, we actually make this molecule and it's having this effect on the body. So that's where these phytocannabinoids can be useful if you've already progressed into a certain disease process where you're chronically anxious or depressed, or you have horrible sleep or things like that. Or the phytocannabinoids can help you, at least in the short run, sometimes in the long run, assist with these issues. Okay, now this is a highly biological portion, but I'm just going to only touch on the receptors, just so you can understand, wow, this system has so many different effects. So the cannabinoid receptor sits on the cell. It listens for any endocannabinoid or phytocannabinoid coming through to have that lock and key mechanism, and then transmit this information about changing a certain condition in your body, changing a certain condition in your cell, and kickstarting a new cellular response. There's two receptors mainly that at least we know about as of right now: CB1 and CB2 receptors. So CB1 is a receptor that the bliss molecule likes to attach upon, and THC, the psychoactive component. of a cannabinol. So CB1 receptors, they're definitely in the brain, very densely packed there and in your spinal column. They have a wide variety of functions when you interact on them, when a cannabinoid interacts. So emotional response, memory, sensory, hunger, motor responsiveness are mediated by CB1. So for example, CB1 receptors in the hypothalamus, which is involved in appetite regulation, and the amygdala, that plays a role in your memory and emotional processes. And then some CB1 receptors are found on your nerve endings. So that's the end of that nerve that you're sensing pain or discomfort or inflammation. So CB1 receptors can be involved in downregulating that response, which is why one person might use these cannabinoids for pain, one might use it for anxiety. And then CB2 receptors, also found in the central nervous system, but they're more concentrated on the immune cell. And more specifically, in the process of inflammation. So inflammation, that's kind of something we hear a lot about today. It's a key process that our body goes through inflammatory cascades. It is natural, it is healthy, but it's when our bodies get stuck in an inflammatory stage, constant inflammation, that we're prone to a lot of these lifestyle diseases, cardiovascular, neurological diseases, musculoskeletal. It's the list goes on. So CB2 receptors actually help to modulate, not stop, not increase, modulate, meaning push forward. So we need to go through our inflammatory response, get out of it so that we can repair and heal. So this is why cannabinoids such as CBD and THC has been used in many different inflammatory diseases. You name it. If it's based in an inflammatory response, it can have a positive effect by modulating the inflammatory pathway, not stopping it and not increasing it. Okay, so how really important is all of this? How really important is cannabinoids? Well, when we think about the human health, when we think about when those essential periods of time when firstborn, and we realize when we look at breast milk and breastfeeding women, breast milk actually has a lot of endocannabinoids. So mommy made cannabinoids that she's passing along to the infant that promote some of the things we already kind of talked about: appetite, an increase in appetite, and an increase in calmness and bonding. So it's a naturally occurring substance in our body. And because it's found in breast milk, we can see that it's definitely an essential part. We make it, we have the system that that has these effects on our body. So it definitely is an important part of the biological process. These cannabinoids really they regulate a lot of things. So motor control, we already talked about, brain and cognition and emotional responses. So I think this goes to the point of, well, it's definitely found in breast milk. So we can make that deduction that it is important and it is a natural occurring molecule. And just for those of you interested, the World Health Organization, for this reason, they recommend breastfeeding up till 2 years old. Okay, so now you're probably interested. You're probably, okay, that makes a lot of sense, or maybe that didn't make any sense. We'll talk. But the important part before you deciding, okay, I'm all in, how can I get a good quality product? I want to try all of these products. Okay, so before you fill up your shopping cart and go on Amazon, be aware that like the supplement realm, these products as they stand right now, they're still going through the battle of legality. So hemp, 100% legal in all 50 states. The research on it, though, is very limited, meaning it's very hard to regulate what is good and what is bad from the FDA's point of view. So, according to the FDA, 91% of all hemp derived products really don't meet that label claim, or they were altered. So, it can be very confusing for a consumer to decide what's a good quality product. And the quickest response I can give to my patients is that get it through a healthcare provider. Because although we don't know all the mechanisms of action of hemp, of CBD, of THC, um, the healthcare provider has seen the clinical effectiveness and at least is understanding and how you start introducing a product like this into your system. So this is one of the products that we use, Biotics Research, their full spectrum hemp product. It's been tested for purity with quite a few certificates for analysis. And I think where Biotics goes, I think a little bit above and beyond is that they get their products third party tested twice. So, oh, I'm running out of time. Hold on. So Biotics gets their products certified and analyzed by someone other than them, so that we can guarantee that what it says on the bottle is absolutely what you're going to get. So this is one of those products. This is another product that we use, CBD, innovative CBD. We utilize both of them, both full spectrum products, which you're probably wondering, what does that mean? It just means that you have all of those cannabinoids that I didn't really go into, the 12 different classifications, not just CBD, but all of the NGs, 3, 4s. It has all of these components inside. So it's not just about the CBD, it's about all of the full spectrum of the cannabinoids. These hemp and CBD products, though, do not have THC in them. So remember, hemp is 0.3% or lower of THC, which is a very, very small amount. THC really comes from the flower, from the female flower of cannabis. Okay, for those of you that don't like taking liquid or oil, there is also a pill form that you can take. And for the local issues, like more of those inflammatory issues from CB1 receptors, you want to utilize local applications. So we use innovative CBD muscle over rub and the Biotics relief roll on. So they kind of had the mentholy hot cold aspect to it, in addition to the CBD, the more specific CBDs for the inflammatory pathways, not so much the neurological ones for mood or sleep, because you're putting this directly on your muscles. You have those receptors all throughout your body. So keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm wrapping up. I promise I'm going to give you, if you want to ask some questions. Overall, hemp. Hemp is a natural supplement. It can effectively improve your health, and you really can feel confident about it when you understand that your body has these pathways. It's embedded into our genetic code, this endocannabinoid system. So can you get by without supplementation? Absolutely. You make it yourself, but it's when we get into these ruts, so to speak, these chronic issues where now we're in the hole. Now we need a little assist in getting out. Now we're having chronic anxiety or chronic poor sleep every night. this is where CBD of the phytocannabinoids can really be useful when utilizing it appropriately. And we're still just scratching the surface on what that means. So one person usually doesn't start the same as the other, but I think overall, low and steady is usually the safest bet. Okay, and lastly, I'm gonna open it up. I have a couple minutes left for any questions that you may or may not have. But for all of those that you joined today and a couple people popped on and off, I'm gonna also be sending you all the resources for today's presentation. So if you like a lot of information, here's all the information that I researched to put this presentation together. I'm going to give you a couple of white papers so that if you're interested in deep diving yourself, you are more than welcome to do so. I think as we're getting more educated about these products and the nomenclature of hemp versus marijuana versus CBD, it will be federally legal all throughout the United States. So it's just a matter of time. There's still research that needs to be done to support all of these claims, but clinically we can see these effects and see how useful they are. So when utilizing them in a safe and effective manner, I think it can benefit a lot of people. So I'm going to stop talking. I only have a couple minutes until Zoom kicks me off. So I'm going to stop the recording and just ask if you guys have any questions. So I'm going to stop here.